Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, great people. How is your life getting on? I hope that all of you are staying in the great condition. In this opportunity, I'd like to work on my CLA assignment that is gonna explain you all about the causative variables. But before I go on to the next or to the main explanation about it, let me introduce myself. Well then, I am Koniatu Zakia, my ID number is T 2019-6188 and I'm from English Education Department 4. Okay, go on to the main explanation about this video. So first, in the previous class, we have already studied about the theory or the hypothesis of second language acquisition. So we can summarize those explanations or the previous studies into two views. First, we have to pay attention, we have to underline that acquisition is more important than learning. So remember this, acquisition is more important than learning. And the second, in order to acquire the second language acquisition, we have to pay attention into two conditions that becomes the pivotal thing, or it becomes the necessary to be known or uh, to be paid attention to the learners itself. So the first is about the comprehensible or better comprehended about the input of second language acquisition that contains of I plus 1. And the second, low or weak effective filter to allow the input in. So this is very important, or it has the relation each other about that comprehensible input and the strength of the filter are the true causes of second language acquisition success. So those things becomes the reason why the second language acquisition pass or done successfully by the learners itself. And the second is about the language teaching. Well then, the second language is implemented into the language teaching itself. So, does it help the learners to better their comprehension? Okay, when we are talking about the acquisition, means that if the acquisition is more central and learning of less use to second language performance, and if the comprehensible input and the filter are the essential causative variables for the second language acquisition, means that the classroom should help only to the extent it supplies comprehensible input in the environment conducive to a low filter. It means that the language teaching classrooms will be provided valuably for the beginners or the one who cannot easily utilize the informal environment for input. And also, the classroom should be valuable for the ones who maybe have just acquired the second language acquisition in their life or in their classroom itself. Well, the next is about when language teaching does not help the learners to acquire the second language. So, not all researchers literature concludes that language teaching is good for second language acquisition, because two studies deal with child second language acquisition and both with English as a second language. As according to Fatman, he found that no significant differences in English proficiency between children who had English as second language instruction and children who did not have the English as second language. So they are already enrolled to the same classroom in the Washington exactly maybe because all the learners are the ones who have the English as second language and the ones who did not have English as the second language, they were getting the same comprehensible input from the school and even then the playground. Means that there are the factors that becomes the helper for the learners when first they are acquiring the second language in the classroom, and the second they are acquiring the second language in their environment, exactly in the playground. So this is very nice for the learners to acquire the second language, and it is easily for them to catch and to comprehend the input that states just now they have, or they got the comprehensible input more than the ones who do not have uh, one in both. For example, when they just acquire the second language in the classroom, not in the playground itself. The third is about the exposure variables that some studies have examined the length of residence, or we can call it as LOR, in the second language environment. So, from those studies of child second language acquisition that can be plausible argue that the LOR, or length of residence, may reflect simply the amount of comprehensible input to the child obtains. For example, when those who had been teaching, or who had been acquiring the second language acquisition in the United States from 3 years did better on the slope test rather than who have been in the United States for 2 years. So we can summarize that in our mind, the ones who are long time, or the ones who have more comprehensible input out of the classroom, will do better in the second language acquisition, or will do better to acquire the second language. And fourth is about age. So, as what stated or reviewed by the Crescent, Long, and Scarzella, they said about 3 ages. These are: first, adults is faster to acquire the second language development rather than the children, and the second, older children acquire faster than younger children, and the last, the acquirers who began natural exposure of the second language during their birth, since they born into the world, since they are childhood, generally they achieve the second language higher rather than the ones who just begin to acquire the language since adult. So 3 age becomes like a point of learners in acquiring the second language. So first is adult, older children, and the ones, or the acquirers that naturally born to acquire the second language, or when they have been born they are acquiring, yes, while acquiring the second language itself. From those, it is simply summarized, or in this case, that we cannot say younger is better acquire, yes, right? Younger is better acquirer, where children are superior to adults only in the long run. So the young learners, or the young acquirer doesn't even always become better acquirer in the second language acquisition. Well, then the next is about the acculturation. Well, like what Schumann states, that the acculturation is a major causal variable in the second language acquisition. And also, he maintains that the second language acquisition is just one aspect of acculturation, and the degree to which the learners acculturates to the target language group that will control the degree to which the acquires the target of the language itself. The fifth is acculturation. So, what as states by the Schumann, acculturation is the major causal variable second language acquisition, and it maintains that Second language acquisition is just one aspect of acculturation, and the degree to which the learner acculturates to the target language group that will control the degree to which he acquires the target language. Well then, the acculturation, uh, it is easily expressible in the terms of comprehensible input and the low filter level. Besides that, acculturation can be viewed or can be summarized that as a means of gaining or earning the comprehensible input and lowering the filter of the hypothesis that we have studied in the previous lesson. Moreover, the comprehensible input of the hypothesis accounts for second language acquisition in the situation that acculturation does not attempt to deal with. Well then, Schumann defines two types of the acculturation. First type is the learners is socially integrated with the target group, and as a result that it develops sufficient contact with the target group speaker to enable them to acquire the target language. And also, the second is about uh, the type of acculturation has all the characteristics of the type 1, but in this case, the learners regards the target language speakers as a reference. Maybe that's all what I can explain you all about the causative variable in the second language acquisition. If I made many mistake, I really beg your pardon. And the last I say, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Goodbye.